I deserve it all. We deserve it all. You deserve it all. In this world where everybody wants to pretend that scarcity is natural and normal and that we just should be happy with whatever we're given, nah, we deserve it all. We need to stand up and take back our power, our creativity, our strength from all those who are trying to take it away from us. This is our great song of harvest. This is our time of harvest. This is our time to take back all that has been taken from us. But we can't do it alone. We only get better as a group. Let's talk about why we deserve it all and how we can get it all as we walk together down creation's paths. Hello, everyone. My name is Charlie, and I am a Christopagan Druid and Priest of Britain.
Hello, everyone. My name is Brian. I'm a Christopagan Druid and sous chef to the Doggo.
Today, we are going to be talking about kind of a foreboding spiritual practice. We're not supposed to talk about how we deserve this or deserve that or should have this or should have that. We're supposed to talk about how it's okay that we don't have, because in the next life, in the future, just give to the pastor and God will take care of everything. But the problem is that's not how any of that works. That's not how any of that is supposed to work. And that is not how we actually get to the promised land that we're trying to get to. We are only going to get where we need to go if we follow the right path. If you couldn't tell from the way I started this episode was inspired by a song by Kendrick Lamar called I Deserve It All on his wonderful album GNX. And we joke around and kind of colloquially refer to Kendrick as a prophet. But on this album and in many of his other albums, he exhibits that prophetic voice that speaks out for change, disruption of the system. A prophet is someone who interferes with injustice. That is the work that we see him and so many others doing. And it's the work that we need to be doing as well. It is so hard to learn how to say the phrase, I deserve it all, because again, we are taught to be happy just having whatever little we have. The moment we think that we deserve anything, like from the labors of our work or anything else, we become a threat to the systems. And as we've been talking about a lot, our war is not against flesh and blood, but against powers, principalities in high places, against those systems.
The longest time I struggled with humility in the sense that I did not understand what humility actually was. I always understood it from the traditionally taught method of sit down, know your place, be humble sense of the term. So when it came to I deserve it all statements, I felt like, well, that's not being humble, which is the exact opposite of that.
That's what we're here to talk about today. So before we get really deep dive into it, if you haven't already, don't forget to like, subscribe, follow, whatever the terminology happens to be on the app that you're listening to us on. We do 5 original Christopagan and Druid episodes Monday through Friday, and we have a lot of stuff coming up. We're going to be talking about how to get ready for Imbolc tomorrow, and you just don't want to miss a thing. We got so much coming up. All right, let's get to it.
This was how I started to put it together to understand it. And it starts with a verse in the Bible that is most often taught as Christ telling us not to stress or worry about our finances, about how we're going to have food on the table, how we're going to eat. Because Christ is saying, hey, the birds, the animals, the trees, God takes care of them. They have food, they have water, they have that provided for them. And so how much more as people of God will we have? And that is one way to read that. But when you look in the sense that I deserve it all statement, it goes, oh yeah, I do deserve that good life. You deserve that good life. All of us as children of God deserve it all. We're promised to have that food. We're promised to have drink. We're promised to have that stuff.
And the way I look at that is about remembering to just align ourselves with nature. It's about sure that we're staying in that creative flow of nature and not deviating from it, because that's what a lot of these systems that we've been talking about do, where Somebody who doesn't do any of the work gets to take all of the money for selling the things that we worked on. Somebody who's
because
doing the work gets to profit off of all of our intellectual property and efforts that we're putting in. And understanding that those systems are the ones that are those powers and principalities in high places. It's not the people, it's the systems. And I'm going to keep chanting that because some people get that wrong.
yeah, yeah, where they get confused and kind of blame it on an individual. Yes, it is wicked people that give into those principalities and powers and that further them and further their causes. And sometimes unwitting dupes that do that too. They're not necessarily wicked. And some are wicked and choose, and some are just foolish and do it. The result is the suffering, because that comes the other half as you get the counter argument, somebody going, well, but what about there are people that are starving? There are people that aren't getting the food they need. That's because of the wickedness of those principalities and powers. Capitalism.
It's the wickedness of the systems.
It's the wickedness of the systems. This country alone produces enough food to feed everyone. Capitalism is what says we have to make a profit off that food and that it gets thrown away. Because if you can't pay for it, you don't get it.
Diamonds are expensive because a couple companies have collected up and are spoon feeding out the diamonds that we have collected. In fact, diamonds are cheap just from what we can mine here on Earth. They're literally solid rocks of diamonds flying around in the solar system that if we really needed diamonds, we could go and get an unlimited supply. The same is true of gold and iron and all of the other things that are out there. There is an artificial scarcity that is placed onto everything that makes us feel like, well, we can't have it all. There's a limit. And in most cases, in a lot of cases, we'll just put it that way, there aren't limits. There are artificial scarcities that are put in. We are here today talking about reclaiming both our worth and how we can take the actions that we need to take to get to the places that we need to get to. We need to realize that we talk about how evil the meat industry is. They were upset that the prices were too low. So they just started killing and burying animals so they could sit back and say, oh, we don't have enough, so that they could artificially increase the prices, because it's all about incentives. This is how we do empowerment and disempowerment in our real world. This is the real magic behind it. It's the incentives and disincentives. If your incentive is not to feed the people, but to make a profit, you're going to be willing to do whatever you need to do to make that profit. Back in the Victorian era, and if we just deregulate our food supply too much, I can see us going right back to this. There was a big problem with people putting cement, lime powder, and other kinds of chalk into flour so that they could take the amount of flour that they had and sell it using these cheaper ingredients put into it and make it go further. And people were getting sick. People were dying because they weren't getting the nutrients they needed. And sometimes they were literally being poisoned by the adulterations in the products. And I bring that up because it's so blatantly obvious back in the Victorian era, but we're still living through that today. We're still living through that today, where they're working on making sure that they can charge the prices that they want and need for everything. And so they're not giving us what we are actually paying for a lot of the time. That milk that you have in your fridge, it's got carrageenan in it. Why? Because people are so divorced from where milk comes from, they don't know that sometimes you got to shake the milk. I grew up and I still do this. Anytime I pull a milk jug out of the fridge, I shake it because sometimes milk separates. That's just the nature of milk. That's how milk works.
That's how you get butter.
That's how you get butter.
But butter is just milk fat that's lumped together and agitated to the point where the water separates out and the milk fats collect together. It's basically super separating your milk.
So it's important for us to know when we say, I deserve it all, I'm not saying we all deserve mansions. I'm not saying we all deserve to be billionaires, because let's be quite honest, nobody deserves to be a billionaire. Nobody, not a single human being on this earth deserves that much wealth. They have been able to concentrate that much wealth because they have kept it away from their employees. They have captured that money that their own employees worked hard to create and kept it for themselves. And that is a selfish act. That is not a humble act. And that is keeping us from having what we deserve. We are not going to get where we need to get unless we start seeking methods and modes of collective empowerment. We have to find ways to gather together to one, be able to say in our hearts, honestly and with integrity, I deserve it all.
The first step in this process is starting with our own mental constructs. Like you said, we've got to start honestly saying, I deserve it all. And know that when we're saying that, yes, we do. Everyone, every person deserves a good life. They all deserve it. And then even to go back to like you're talking about with the billionaires and the millionaires, much is expected to whom much is given. So if you deserved those millions and billions, you also deserve the responsibility of taking care of your community, of making sure the rest of your people in your community get they deserve, and that is a good life as well. So that means giving back into the community and taking care of the community. And that's part of the thing is when we're thinking about that, breaking free from the constructs, it doesn't necessarily mean that, they have to just give the money back to no millionaires and no billionaires, not necessarily, but they should have a responsibility and an expectation of doing those things in the community, not just hoarding it and sitting in their little castle and going, no, I've hoarded this. I'm going to sit on it now.
Yeah, but see, that's where you and I differ. I don't think that anybody should be hoarding that much wealth that was created by people who was not them. People who were not them created that wealth and they took it. I try not to let my hellfire and brimstone preacher come out of me, but it's in my blood. It's the tradition that I came from. My grandfather and great grandfather were the kind of preacher, and I try not to let it out. But it is important for us to remember because, we get this twisted so much in our society today. The sin of Sodom. Go to Ezekiel. God and Ezekiel have a conversation. Why was Sodom destroyed? Because of their arrogance and their inhospitality. They were not taking care of the poor, of the refugees. They were not making sure that the people in their cities had enough to eat. They were taking from others so that they could prosper. That's why Sodom and her sisters were destroyed.
Yeah. If you're a wealthy person acting like Scrooge, where you're debating whether or not a person gets a lump of coal to put into the fire to heat the room that they're working in because, it's over 60 degrees and maybe they should just wear more jackets, that's a wicked person. Yeah. That is a wicked person. And that is a big no.
That's why we have to come together as a group, as people. We can't do this one by one. We can empower ourselves. We can realize that what we need in our own lives and work towards that. But if we are not collectively organizing, then they are able to take away those means that we have found to take control. Why did TikTok have to go away? Why did TikTok have to go away? Was it the Chinese? Did it have anything to do with the Chinese? No, people were upset at how many people were making a living on TikTok completely outside of the control of the corporations. They were able to build their own lives completely independent and out of that corporate structure. And if you actually listen to the people who promoted the TikTok ban, that's what they kept saying. We need to get people back to work. We need to get people back in the offices. We need to get people back in the work, back to work. All of this TikTok stuff, it's just a distraction. It's taking people away. So they were able to find, here's a way that people are empowering themselves. And I'm not saying TikTok was a good company. Please don't misunderstand me. No corporation is good. All corporations are intrinsically bad because they are designed to devour resources and make money. And that is an unsustainable to exist. But individuals had found their way to use that system to get independence for themselves.
One of the more obvious ways that you're dealing with a principality or a power is if you look at the thing through time, the message is usually the same because those principalities and powers use the same message over and over again. They'll change some of the words, but the message stays the same. The words were different in we got to get rid of TikTok. But you know what? If you go back to like the Gilded Age or the fight for the workers' rights, when we had the rise of unions, the language was the same from
They
those working the they were going, how dare this unwashed rabble step up and demand rights.
Oh, they used the same language. It was
And
about the
it was the
laziness.
same language. It's about the laziness. Yeah. The whole, like, when we moved, the feudal system was going away. Like, you can go back even further and look at the end of the feudal system and the same conversations. It was the same language. The lords of the manor and their servants, the same language. How dare they demand these rights? That's how you know you're dealing with the principality or power.
And
You can swap the people in and out, and it's the same thing no matter what people and age.
in that original Gilded Age, which it looks like we're going for part 2, Electric Boogaloo right now. Remember, the fight was against people that were shouting 8, 8, 8. What does that mean?
Yeah.
8 hours of work, 8 hours of rest, 8 hours of sleep. That they were fighting for an 8-hour workday. They were marching through the streets chanting 8, 8, 8. They were chanting it 8, 8, 8 because they just wanted 8 hours of work, 8 hours at home, and 8 hours of sleep. And all the talk was about these lazy people not wanting to put in 16, 20, 24-hour days. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound
Yeah.
familiar to everybody? And especially now that the science is in, right? We're supposed to be a rational people that follow the science. Science says if you make somebody work for more than 4 hours, their productivity plummets. So a work day should actually be, if we're going to be scientific about it, 4 hours at most. You should be able to make your entire living working 4 hours a day because that's your productivity time. You got 4 hours of productivity time every day. Doesn't mean you can't work for more than that, but your productivity goes down on average after that point. Science is in, the studies have been done, but they don't want to hear that because that means that they have to pay more. They have to pay more people. They have to take from their own money. And this is, again, that reason for collective empowerment. When we say, I deserve it all, we deserve it all, you deserve it all, they are sitting back saying, no, 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 no. The rich deserve it all. The powerful deserve it all. The business owners deserve it all. There's not a we there because they're not talking about their fellow business owners. They're talking about themselves. And we are here trying to make sure that everybody is ready to come in for this global harvest because this is the change that needs to sweep the world. And you can see it popping up here, there, and yonder. You can see the communities that are starting to rise, the mutual aid organizations. You can see it so beautifully during the pandemic. The pandemic showed how little we need their systems of control because, yes, they needed to help with the medicines, they needed to help with the big, heavy lifting stuff. Who took care of the people that were sick? Who took care of the people that were hungry? Who took care of the community? Who organized food banks and food kitchens to make sure
It's
that
like with
people
the
had meals?
it's
They
like with
didn't
the
do that.
working
We
at
did.
yeah, and it's like with working at home. It's a system of control to have everybody go into an office and work there because a manager can sit and make sure to crack that whip so everyone stays working hard through the full workday and not goofing off. Well, if if your workers are signed in and you know working with a decent ethic, they found out, oh, they're actually more productive working from home.
Uh-oh.
Those yeah. And a lot of the studies are showing, oh, they actually got more work done because they didn't sit and spend half the days worrying about what their kids were up to, what their pets were up to, what was going on at the house. They were able to be fully mindful and in the moment. And then when the kids needed some attention, they could put work down, take care of the kids for a few minutes, and then come back. And they found other workers that, put in a lot more hours. They're just like, you know, they were happy doing what they were doing. They just needed to be able to stop periodically and take care of other stuff.
What makes me a Christopagan and not just a pagan is I worship and serve Jesus Christ, the God of liberation. The mission statement of Jesus is that he is the one that was set here to set the captives free, bring relief to the oppressed, recuperation to the crushed, to give sight to the blind, hearing to the deaf, food to the hungry, water to the thirsty, healing to the sick. That is a God of liberation. And so many people want to turn that God of liberation into a God of control and domination. And that is not the Jesus we find in the Gospels. Whether I had a relationship with Bridget or anybody else, I would still be a Christopagan because I worship that God of liberation that is found in the scriptures and not this manufactured God of domination that we see in way too many of the churches. because when the church kneeled to power, it sacrificed the good of all of us. It sacrificed the good of the global community for the short term gain that the empire promised. Justice, equality, these are things that were sacrificed on the altar of the imperial church that we're still fighting to get back. We're here working for justice, equality, equity, and to protect the environment because it is the only one we have.
Because that's the big thing, that living in right relationship. It's why we keep bringing up living in right relationship,
Yes.
because liberation is about justice. It's about trust. It's about living in right relationship. It's not about fighting the man or necessarily. It's about that living in right relationship on how it can best manifest for the moment we're in.
This starts at home. This starts with you, with your found family, with your friends, with your other family, whatever you have. It starts there and it grows out into the community. It grows into those mutual aid and mutual support networks that we all have around us. I am astounded at some of the rewilding projects that are going on, some of the projects that are going on to make sure that the homeless have a place to be in these cold temperatures that we've been going through, that they have food and shelter. Finding those places, that's where this starts. It starts with us organizing from the ground up, because as long as they keep us blind and waiting for a leader to arise that's going to take us to the promised land, we are going to stay slaves in Egypt.
Really,
We have to rise up. We have to build from the ground up our own networks of aid and support where we are going to stand for each other and for each other's rights and not let them come for any of us. As Jesus said, what you do to the least of these, you've done to me. So if you're not standing up for the Latino community right now while they're under threat, you are not doing that for Jesus. If you're not standing up for the trans people or the queer people or the Black community or any of the other communities that are currently under threat, you are not doing that to Jesus. That's the God of the Gospels. And more churches need to be saying that loud, proud, and full throated with the force that they could bring to the institution. So get yourself out there. Find ways that you can advocate for those marginalized voices. How can you work for sustainable living? And don't get trapped in that. We're not going to solve climate change because we're using less power or because we're making sure to not use as much plastics or what have you. Yeah, that's good. That's nice. That's wonderful to do. But the actual people that are putting the carbon dioxide into the air that's heating us up, it's the oil and gas companies. It's the big corporations that are doing that. Our changes are just scratching a little bit off of the chart. They're the ones that need to be doing it, but they're trying to offshore that to us, even though they know that that won't make a change. That won't
well, and
actually make a difference.
part of that's also back to that live in right relationship with yourself. You have to be honest with yourself about what you can do and what you can't do right now. Part of Southern California has been on fire for a week, and I there's a lot of things I can't do that I would love to do. I can send prayers and positive thoughts to them at least. And sometimes that's all you can do in the moment. And you have to accept and be okay with yourself, because you got to be in right relationship with yourself. Is once again, as Charlie says, that's where the burnout comes in, because yes, we want to do all this stuff, but we are not necessarily able to. And if we are able to do more, then we should definitely be doing that more, and recognizing that a lot of things have more than one solution.
So if you've not heard the song that inspired this episode, it's called I Deserve It All by Kendrick Lamar. And it's him going through all of his life and struggles and how he worked, not just for himself, but with others and all of the people along the way that got him to where he is now. That he moved as a community and he's moving with that community to help that community as well. You need to be looking into the mirror every day. Every day. I deserve it all. We deserve it all. My community deserves it all. We deserve abundance. We deserve justice. We deserve liberty. And once you can get that firmly rooted in your soul, start looking for ways that you can speak up and speak out, that you can be those agents of change. Maybe you can't do something at your workplace because you're not organized yet, but you can help to console and work with those that are there. Do it. Find a way. Find a way to be that voice, that actor, that agent of change, even if it seems small to you. Because again, we fight the big lie that something big's going to come and change us. Oh, it'll all be better come the revolution. I've been hearing about the revolution since I was a child. The revolution is not coming. The revolution will not save us. We will save us. And as long as we're waiting for the revolution, for the leader, for the hero, for the agent of change to come on the scene, we're letting them get away with everything. So be strong. Repeat it to yourself. I deserve it all. We deserve it all. My community deserves it all. We deserve it all. We deserve to be strong, to be taken care of, to not be harassed and threatened. We deserve safety, security. We deserve the four freedoms. And as long as we're fighting for our rights, which include the rights of others, we will get there in the end. I hope this episode has meant something to you. I hope that it has helped you out. It's a little bit of a divergence from where we usually come from, but given everything going on right now, I think you can see the build to this. And if you want to kind of walk the path to get to this episode, I highly recommend you go back and check out the previous ones. But I would love to know what you're doing in your communities to help out. Or even if you don't have the strength or the wherewithal, or it needs to be secret because you can't let people know what you're doing right now, just put in the chat, we deserve it all. It's right there in the comments, wherever you are. If you're listening to us on YouTube or Spotify, you leave a comment right there. If you listen to us anywhere else, even if they say you can leave a comment, they will not notify us. So leave the comment there anyway, because engagement is magic. Then head over to creationspast.com, click on the chat. And once you're there, leave your comment and we will be able to see it and get back to you. While you're there, if you happen to have a few dollars you can pass our way, we offer monthly and annual memberships. You can also support us on Patreon and Ko-fi. I am CE Dorset on both. And if you don't have any money to give right now, or if you are not sure that we're the kind of people that deserve your hard-earned treasure, I completely understand that. But if any of the episodes that we've done have helped you out, please share them with other people, because that helps us out more than you could possibly know. All right. Until next time. Oh, we're going to church on this one. Oh, Jesus, who stands in the breach, who gave his life to an unjust system to save his friends, who laid down his life for his friends, who laid down his life for all of us, that we may know that we are the friends of God, not the servants of God, not the slaves of God, but the friends of God. Help us to be strong in these times and to stand up for ourselves and for each other so that liberty, justice, freedom, and equality can reign. Amen.
Amen.